This is the sound of refusing to give in. It's leaving nothing to chance. Searching relentlessly for the right, the only treatment option that will keep a heart beating. Fortunately, the Christ Hospital Health Network has groundbreaking treatment options unavailable anywhere else in the country, developed with help from our own physicians. That's what makes us Greater Cincinnati's Heart Hospital and one of the top heart hospitals in the world. The Christ Hospital Health Network, everything it takes.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 807, how Arash's weight loss journey is changing lives and changing pasta.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Pound This Podcast. Before we get into this amazing conversation with my friend Arash about his incredible journey, I want to tell you about some other amazing people in my life. One being Sarah in Team Fit With Me, who also has a very incredible life-changing story that includes this podcast of how her life has changed, and now she is a full-time health coach with a whole team of people that help you with your mental wellness, help you with your physical wellness, help you with your nutrition, help you reach your goals no matter what they are, whether it's weight loss, I want to get stronger, I just want accountability, I need to just understand my own body a little bit better when it comes to your hormones or your gut health. Whatever you're looking to work on, Sarah can help you with her whole team of people, and she is fantastic. So if you're looking for a great health coach that's virtual so you can work with her anywhere, definitely reach out to Sarah and check her out. And right now you can save 10% off of month one of all packages and plans when you go to teamfitwithme.com/poundthis. And then if you need to add some healthy, convenient food to that, you should check out Clean Eats. So I'm a meal prepper. I've been meal prepping for almost a decade, and to have someone else meal prep for me is chef's kiss amazing. I go to Clean Eats in Newport, Kentucky. Here in Cincinnati, they're also in Westchester. There's Clean Eats all over the country. So if you struggle with eating healthier food and you need some convenience, because don't we all, you got to check out Clean Eats. Not only do they have the entire frozen section of all the grab and go meals, they have the cafe so you can go in there and have lunch. You can have lunch meetings there. They are smoothies. Kick ass. They're awesome. I had strep throat a couple weeks ago, and by the time I was not contagious, I went in there to pick up my meals. They made me a smoothie to help my throat. Awesome. And then I do all of the fresh meals. I personally do 21 meals a week. And so I do breakfast, I do lunch, and I do dinners, and it's amazing. The variety is amazing. All the food is fresh. It's clean ingredients. It is awesome. So if you're looking to have a healthier lifestyle, some easy nutrition choices, definitely check out Clean Eats. And they're doing the Clean Eats We Change Lives Challenge right now, where you could win $25,000, which who could not use that? So go to cleaneats.com and you can check out those guys. Right now, let's check out Arash. Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I am Amanda Valentine, returning guest, but hasn't been a guest since 2019. So we're a few years in the future now, as listed in this recording studio as Shred Daddy. Hello, Arash.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's great to be back.
Right? Well, I mean, fun fact.
This is our first remote one.
Yeah, well, we recorded last week and then we didn't publish this one. So we just had a conversation that we get to repeat.
That's true. I was a little bit of a perfectionist, and I asked for a redo. So
yeah. So just as a heads up, in case I reference something that we may have talked about a week ago, but I'm pretty confident we can have a completely fresh new conversation. Yeah. So I know the first time that you were on this podcast was in 2018. I believe you were episode 53, somewhere in the 50s. And now we're in the 800s, which is crazy, right? I just can't stop talking. I can't shut up. And you've been on a couple other times with your wife and talking about creating. The last time you were on was in the fall of 2019, talking about how you are creating your new company called Almond Love with your almond flour, high protein, low carb. Was that one high protein or just low carb?
Yeah. I think I had 3 net carbs and 20 grams of protein a serving. So
That's
Might
awesome.
have been 22 or 23, but it was high protein.
So before we get into the pasta and all of these things, let's re-go over your journey and like where your beginnings were to how you created a community online, how you got to create a pasta where you are now. I mean, you've done like some really kick-ass things and you have this really incredible story. So I'm going to ask you to retell it again.
Sure. How far back are we going?
Take me to your childhood.
Sure. So I'll just kind of give you a brief summary, but you have to just promise me you'll jump in when I'm getting a little too into the weeds here.
Okay.
But I was born in the States. Actually, I'm the first member of my family who was born in the States. My dad was getting his doctorate degree here, actually where I live now, which is Amherst, Massachusetts. And I lived here for the first 3 years of my life. Then we had to move back to Iran. That's where my family's from. So we lived in the Middle East for about 7 years while my parents tried everything they could to get us out of the country. At the time, immigration to Canada was a lot easier. So in 97, we ended up immigrating to Canada. I lived in Halifax and Nova Scotia on the east coast of the country for about 3 years. And then in 2000, we moved back to the States. Just me and my parents, my sister and brother stayed in Canada at the time. So growing up, I think I started kind of having weight problems pretty early on, really as far back as I can remember. And, I think I had a lot of change in my life growing up. And I think the one constant was food. And growing up in Iran, I remember like we had like Western TV, as they call it, was illegal. So we had this illegal satellite on the roof. It was quite shady, but I'd see all these commercials, and I remember like the Dairy Queen commercial, and McDonald's and things like that. So I think early in my life, it like instilled this kind of like desire to like enjoy all these foods that I really couldn't have. And then so as I kind of grew up, I started getting weight problems and didn't necessarily have the best relationship with food. So fast forward a whole number of years, my highest weight was probably around like 340-ish pounds. I really stopped stepping foot on the scale. And, I yo-yo dieted quite a bit. I've tried every sort of diet imaginable, from the cabbage soup diet to Weight Watchers to Jenny Craig to the Zone to South Beach to Atkins, like you name it, I've tried it. I've always lost like the initial 10, 15 pounds and then jumped right back into my old habits and then gained it all back plus some. I think that'll resonate with quite a few people here. But, I ended up in, I think 2008, 2009, losing about 60 or so pounds. That was like the lion's share of what I lost. And then I ended up losing another 30, 40 pounds. And then, over the course of the next 10 years, I was climbing the ladder, so to speak. At my first job, I worked at a large company after graduating from college. I was doing exceptionally well. But in late 2017, I just kind of like took a look at my wife. I was like, look, this is not like what I want to be doing. I was doing extremely well professionally, but personally, I just was not in a good headspace. And so I think we were heading on a vacation in March of 2017. And I kind of told her, hey, like, I'm really going to think about this during this vacation, whether I'm going to quit or not. She was, incredibly supportive. And so, on the vacation, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this like one real last try to like, be a good corporate employee. And like, maybe I've just been like a little too hard on myself, but, I'm going to try to make this work. And so first day back from vacation, I was like, yeah, this is not going to work out. So I ended up quitting actually in September of 2017 and started my Shred Happens account on Instagram to just kind of document my weight loss journey. And, it's kind of brought me to the conversation today. There's a lot that's happened, but, through that process, I fell in love with just kind of creating healthier versions of my favorite foods. And, it's been amazing to be able to connect with so many people around the world and to be able to share what I love to do. Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome that I'm so glad I got to be part of your journey or witness it, that I met you in 2018, right before you did your first Ironman. And that's how I heard about you. You were recommended to me from two other people that had been on the podcast are like, do you follow him on Instagram? Like, and I'm like, no. And I started following you and I was like, this guy's a badass. I wonder if he'll come on the podcast. Which I just love that concept of, because it's so scary. It is scary to leave a career, especially a career that you are doing well in, especially like financially, and you are like secure. And I mean, I really like, obviously relate to that, to follow, like to know things aren't right, to be like, I'm not feeling good physically and mentally. Something has to change. So I just love that you're like, I'm going to sign up for an Ironman and quit my job to take care of myself. I just think that it's such a boss move.
Yeah. Yeah, looking back, I should give myself a little bit more credit. And look, I made the decision in March, and so, I think this looks different for different folks, right? People have kids, family obligations. People have, whether it's law school debt or medical, just regular school debt. I think with school being so expensive or whatever it is, it could be a number of different obligations. But for me, luckily, I decided this. I had the support of my wife, and we decided in March, and I pretty much went on a massive cost cutting effort and just got rid of anything extra you could possibly imagine. I ended up, getting rid of my car. I ended up selling things on Facebook Marketplace at the time and OfferUp and things like that. So, there was probably about a period of about 6 months where we just really dialed things back because I knew it was going to be a challenge. And again, luckily my wife did have a job that supported us as well. But I started, doing things on the side myself to just kind of, selling things on eBay. I was,
selling feet pictures.
No feet pictures. I feel that could be a pretty lucrative thing, given how the internet has gone over the last few years. But no, but I wasn't afraid to kind of get my hands dirty and do what it takes to kind of pursue my dreams as well. So I think that again looks different for different people, but the concept of just kind of living a different life, a life that was more true to myself, was attractive enough for me to kind of go through that hardship.
Well, obviously it paid off, because if you wouldn't have made that choice, you would not be sitting right here today. Yeah,
definitely.
So did that start then with the conscious decision to go, I mean, you had already done all of these diets, and I'm right there with you. I've done a lot of those as well, and did the yo-yo thing of losing 60 pounds and gaining it back, and losing 40 and gaining it back, and, using the cheat way of doing it. Like, I'm going to do Atkins, but that means all bologna and hot dogs. Yeah. So like from all that yo-yo dieting, how did that turn into the conscious decision of like, I'm going to make this life-changing move. I'm going to start out with like this, low carb, almost like, did you borrow that from other things as success? Is that the way you found it you prefer eating? What was it?
I think, when I initially set out to lose weight, I did like a 90 or 120 day challenge where like I had a caloric goal every day. I was tracking what so I had learned a ton from all the different failures. And I think that's one of the important things to keep in mind. It's like, you're like a mosaic of like all your past failures, so to speak. Right. So I knew that certain things that I liked, and I knew certain things that I didn't like. And I had learned some things that I was like, okay, this has to be part of the solution. And so for me, given that I had just kind of, lost weight, gained it back, lost weight, gained it back, one of the biggest things for me was like tracking what I was eating, because, and this is arguably still a problem today. Like, I'm the king of, bites, tastes, and licks, and like little, just like, I'm a nibbler, right? Like, and it's not easy when you're, a content creator now, where you're around food 24/7. But I made a conscious decision to track what I was eating. And this could be different for others. It might be triggering for some, so it's not necessarily the right solution for everybody. But for me personally, it was important to kind of like be cognizant and mindful of what I was eating. And so I use MyFitnessPal. I think there's a number of different apps that are out there. And I was just tracking what I ate. And my goal, I think at the time, was 1,800 to like 2,200 calories a day. And I wasn't necessarily low carb, but I cut out all the simple carbs, right? So I was not eating white bread or regular potatoes or, rice or whatever. I was eating more complex carbs, and I would try to eat them earlier on in the day and eat a lighter meal at night that was low carb, so that I have like the day to kind of burn the carbs, so to speak. Um, and so, that was one of the things that I was doing. I was tracking my water intake. I was prioritizing protein. And then, as I was losing weight, it became like harder and harder to lose weight after had lost my initial, weight. And so I started kind of being a little bit more restrictive, so to speak, or dialing things back a little bit more. And so that's when I really started to get into like low carb, ultra low carb, and keto for a while. And that's when really ultimately kind of like the light bulb moment came, where I was just so unhappy with like the low carb pastas that were available. They either tasted like fish or the texture wasn't right. And really back then there wasn't like a ton of options. There was just really like shirataki noodles. And so that's kind of
Oh
what gave me the
man,
idea.
that just like triggered some flashbacks for me. I ate
Yeah.
so many of those things. I
Right.
haven't had those in
Calories.
forever.
Yeah, 10 calories, little bags. You open them, they stink.
Rinse them off.
Trainer rinse them off, exactly. And but yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of just vacillated, and I tried to bring together different pieces or components that felt right to me, and then just kind of continuously adjusted it as I went. And then as I was training for my races, I realized like my performance was completely off when I was like doing ultra low carb. So I started introducing some carbs into my diet to be able to like train for these races. And then it's changed a couple of times since then as well. But I think the big thing has been prioritizing protein and eating lower starch, cutting back sugar. For me, that's been the most help.
So for being a content creator now and sharing so many like beautiful recipes that you make, is that kind of based off of just like, this is what I'm eating and I'm showing everybody, or how much is it like I need to like create something to show?
I think earlier on in my career, earlier on in my content creation days, it was more of a vlog, or not vlog, like a blog or a diary of what I was actually eating. I think as my presence has grown and my audience has grown, it's become less, here's today, like Monday, February, whatever, and today I ate X, Y, and Z. It's become more planned content. Those are foods that I consume. It's just there is more of a schedule behind, some of the content that I consume. Having said that, I don't plan or schedule every piece of content. So, for those watching, like I do a lot of power bowls. So, if I'm making something that day, I will shoot it and that's what I'm eating. But there's certain pieces of content that I create that I, plan in advance that I know I'm gonna create, and then I'll of course consume it afterwards. But so a lot of it's organic, but some of it's also non-organic. It's probably a terrible analogy to use here, but a lot of it's what I normally eat in a day. But then there's other pieces of content that I've scheduled because I think it'll be cool or it'll be interesting, and I'll be kind of playing around in the kitchen, and I'll end up thinking, oh, I should go out and make X, Y, or Z, and I'll make that, and then I'll enjoy it afterwards.
So how do you just dream up recipes, or do you have like inspiration? Do you have a Pinterest board that helps you create something?
Don't have a Pinterest board. I do have a Pinterest account that I'm really terrible at using Pinterest. I still haven't figured out how exactly it works. I do have some content on it. I don't think I've ever responded to a comment, or I don't even know if you comment on Pinterest, but it's more just kind of on the go, and I think in the past I've had instances where, I've had partnerships with certain brands and they want to be extremely prescriptive about what I make. And that's kind of where I shut down. My best creativity comes out when I just get into the kitchen, I open the fridge, I take out a few pieces of, protein or different ingredients, and I just kind of make something on the go. It's very rare that I set out to do something, intentionally. It's usually kind of like an accident. And luckily I film everything as I'm going, because I oftentimes forget like how many tablespoons of like oil did I put in, or how much of this spice did I put in. So I have to kind of like go back and rewatch it again to make sure that and then sometimes I'm of course adding more of a certain ingredient later on. So I've gotten the habit so that I don't have to necessarily do things multiple times to like just film everything so that I can then remember exactly what I did. But most of the time it's just kind of on the fly.
Well, it's interesting. I learned 2 lessons from you just in this past week from our own conversation that we had a week ago that that was never to be heard again until this week, because I made one of your salads twice this week because it was so freaking good. So 2 things. One was I made the dressing for it, and it had like chilies in it that I had never even heard of before. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I didn't even know they were a thing. And I'm like, oh, well, here they are. How do you even say it? Like adobo? What is it?
Adobo, okay. Adobo chipotle peppers.
Yeah. And I'm like, I didn't know that was a thing. And then I ate it. Like seriously, I wish I would have recorded this. The first bite I took of the salad, I'm like, damn, I can go change my pants. Yeah. Like, and I was like, how did he think of this? Like, how did he think of this like dressing? Because I'm like, this is so damn good. And like, how do you just pull this out of your butt? So like, that's where I felt like that, where I was just like, oh my God, like I never would have thought to make this. Yeah. You know, and I've like made my own like very boring recipes myself. Like you're way more like adventurous and like with stuff like that, where I'm like, here's chicken, rice, and broccoli again with a different kind of sprinkle on seasoning. So like that, where I was like, man, that's really cool that you're just kind of like exploring and creating these sorts of things. Cause I'm like, again, like I never in a million years would have even looked for that or tried it. And 2, I recreated one of your recipes last summer, and I made a joke in the process, which is true, that I like have these crappy knives that I got for a wedding gift in 2009, and I've never sharpened them. Like they suck. I mean, they're also like the crappiest like Farberware or whatever. Like they're not like cool knives. And so I'm watching your videos, and like you're like, cut everything in tiny little pieces. I'm like, how am I going to do that? These knives aren't going to do that. Yeah. So I went and bought new knives after our conversation last week. Again, it was nothing crazy. It was a Walmart purchase. But that is a game changer. And I'm like, oh, look how tiny I'm getting all that. And it's like easy to cut everything. And I'm like, oh, this actually like has me like excited. I'm like, I didn't know how much a knife was going to change my life.
I think if there's 2 takeaways from this conversation, one is get a small little food processor like the one that I have. It's about $40 on Amazon. The second thing is get your knives sharpened. It makes the world of difference. It's game changing.
It is. It totally is. And just even, I mean, I eat so many avocados anyway. Right. So just even slicing that up, I'm like, oh my God, I can get everything so thin.
Yeah. And there's services that you can go and get your knives sharpened, you know, like by mail, or, you know, if you're in a major city, or just, it could be in a small town too, but, you know, just go on Yelp or Google and search for like a knife sharpener place. And, you know, they do a really good job.
Is it not those little grinders? Like, do those not do as good of a job?
A little bit more advanced than that. Or maybe that's what they use. I don't know. But, you know, I get my knives sharpened online. I think it's called like Sharpenters or something, but I just do it by mail every, you know, few weeks. And every time I get it back, I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible.
Do you have some super fancy knives?
I do have nicer knives. So we had some friends stay with us in Cincinnati, and they kind of like gave me an intervention. They're like, Arash, like you have an Instagram. Like, what are these knives? You can't be using these. And so they got me my first set of real good knives. They're like, I think they're pronounced Shun, Shun, and they're incredible knives. I think they're about like, you know, $80 to $120, $130, but they are just some of the best things that, it's definitely one of the best gifts I've ever received. And since then I've bought a few. And then last year for my birthday, my brother-in-law gifted me a knife as well. And so it's a really nice knife. It's from Romania. And so those are my favorites. But we do have a couple older knives that I get sharpened, standard, like, you know, Walmart, Target purchases. And when they're sharpened, they're just as good as the fancy knives. Right. So,
yeah, I see. I got a little 3-pack and it was like $12, but it was like such a game changer that I'm like, oh my God, like, I mean, what have I been doing?
Right. Send in your old knives to get sharpened, and you'll be shocked.
Can you sharpen? This is a stupid question. Mm-hmm. Can you sharpen serrated knives?
I believe so, but I may be wrong.
Okay. Because that's all I've been using is like the crappiest serrated. I also eat with baby spoons. So it's not
Right,
like I'm not really high
definitely
level. I legit eat with
Yeah.
children's spoons.
Yeah.
They make you feel like you're
So,
eating more.
yeah, serrated knives can and should be sharpened, but they don't need it very often. So
Well, I got a feeling mine do because they're from 2009 and probably most likely they were like a Walmart purchase. I don't feel
That's
like
all right.
anybody in my gift registry ever bought me anything fancy for
Yeah.
my wedding. So
I think getting those sharpened could be a really good experiment.
yeah, and I've even like looked into. Did you ever take one of these? Like I saw that there was a class here in Cincinnati of like a knife skills class.
No.
And I'm like, that seems like it'd be really helpful so I could cut like onions in like really cool ways, like I'm watching
Yeah.
on Food Network.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's YouTube videos available. I think Masterclass probably has a few things, but those like in-person experiences are always a lot more memorable, and, it helps to kind of not be distracted by the million other things that are going on. So if you're actually physically there, it's probably going to be a little bit more easy to recall.
So off of the weapons topic
Yeah.
and back onto your journey, do you feel like, you talked about how you kind of started with the vlog, like sharing what you were eating and sharing your weight loss journey to what you're doing now. Do you feel like it was helpful in keeping you on track of sharing those kinds of like personal stories, or was that any way detrimental? Do you feel like where you are now and what you're doing now and looking back in the past? Because I know so many people that have shared like their specifically like weight loss journey online, and then it can go both ways. Like it can get so in your head of, speaking from personal experience too, of like, I feel like I am pressured now. Like if I gain any weight back or if I do all this sort of thing, like I've put it on a public platform, and then you start feeling shame that maybe you wouldn't have felt in the past, or you would feel, but you wouldn't feel on such a high degree. I just think it's such an interesting concept, especially now that we've been in the social media world for like a decade and we're kind of like learning as we go along. I think a lot of people start with the best of intentions. Like I'm going to share my journey for my personal accountability, and along the way I get to help other people. But then does it ultimately lead to somewhere that's not positive sometimes?
Yeah, I think, when I was at the beginning, when I started my page, I very quickly realized that I felt much more attracted to the recipe creation aspect of the weight loss process rather than sharing like the vulnerable ups and downs of the weight loss process. So, if I'm being, brutally honest, I don't think I really did a good job of bringing my audience along the journey of like the mind, F that it is to go through the weight loss process, right? The ups and the downs. Everybody kind of just thinks that it's linear. In reality, you have weeks where, you gain weight. There's weeks that you crush it and you gain weight. There's weeks that you crush it and stay at the same weight. There's weeks that you go on vacation and come back and you've lost 2 pounds. I think I didn't necessarily do a good job of kind of taking my audience through that journey with me. I did what, I think a lot of people fault social media for, which is I kind of shared the highlights, so to speak, right? So like I didn't talk about necessarily training for my half Ironman or my full marathon or the 5K or the 10K. Like maybe I'd show glimpses of me doing runs and stuff. I wouldn't necessarily talk about the setbacks. I'd talk about me being at the race or me finishing the race, and it was just because I just didn't necessarily feel like as comfortable sharing the vulnerable aspects of the process. And I admire those that do. And I wish I could. It's just, I think I'm a little bit more reserved than that. In terms of where I'm at today, I think, I'm not at my goal weight. I probably want to lose another 35 pounds. I'd say, during COVID, I gained about 15 to 20 pounds. I've lost about 10 pounds of that. And, when I was training for an Ironman, I was a lot more, quote unquote, like, I think I'm at the same weight now, but I was more lean then than I am today. And so, I think I just don't have time to train right now for a triathlon. I'd love to compete, and I know I want to compete in them more, but I'm just, there's just so many demands on my time right now that it just doesn't allow me the time. I still get up and work out early in the morning just because that's how I feel my best. But I think eventually I'll end up making the time for longer races, because those do really keep me motivated, and they're good, good kind of aspirational goals for me to just kind of continue raising the stakes.
Yeah. And I think that's super important, just even sharing that's not, that none of it's linear, like nothing is. Like you're going to go through these phases and changes, and you're going to have to like also, I think that's just an incredible self-awareness to be like, I want to do this, but tonight, right now is not the best time. And you thinking that exercise is stress on the body. So if you're already going through incredible stress of owning a business, being a content creator, also trying to take care of your own general health and wellness, and now I'm going to throw a triathlon on top that's not actually like, that's not going to be healthy or helpful, of being aware of that instead of being like, no, I have to push myself to do something because that's what quote unquote healthy is. And I feel like a lot of people get stuck in that sort of space of just piling on because that's what quote unquote they're supposed to do, or what healthy looks like, when healthy is actually being self-aware of what's too much or what's too little.
I think that's spot on. And, in our last conversation that never got aired that we mentioned, we'd kind of talked about this really briefly. And I think I mentioned something along the lines of, I want to do the races because of like the mental strength and the fortitude that it kind of brings me. And I was just kind of debriefing with Madalena over dinner the other day, and she was asking about the conversation, and I was like, oh yeah. And then I kind of mentioned, about the, wanting to do the races sometime in the future, because I really want to build the mental fortitude, not necessarily the physical. She said, well, the good news is that, working on your business is giving you all the mental fortitude that you need. So I think you got that covered for now. So I think that was her way of saying, you probably made the right decision.
Yeah, it's too much. Well, and we were just like, again, to kind of repeat what we were saying last time, but for nobody else other than us too, that's going to know we're repeating it. Like I was even talking about like how where I'm at in my own journey right now has been so much more of the mental health journey than the physical. Yeah. Just in the past couple of years, it's been really heavily focused on mental health for me. And because of old ingrained habits in me and how I am of just really being my own bully, or as my therapist has called it, being my own abuser, is that I'm like, oh my God, I'm not in this physical condition where, I have been in the past and kind of beat myself over it. But I'm like, I'm working on my mental health in so many ways. And why isn't that counting? Of like, I'm getting my reps in of working on that. And I'm hitting so many quote unquote PRs in my own mental health, where I can see same scenarios coming up that would have come up in the past, and I'm handling them in different ways. And that's because of the mental health work I am doing, which is so incredibly important. And again, like, is that a different kind of reward than like I have a bunch of race medals behind me, than running a 5K or doing something else where I'm going to be rewarded in that way for a physical strength. I'm being rewarded with like calmer mental health, having more peace, being more authentically who I am and understanding myself. And that I shouldn't smack that away because I don't have abs right now. With that being said, it's so funny that I did a group fitness class this morning, and I did one yesterday. And so I'm trying to get back more into my physical health, because I just feel really good. Like you were saying, like I feel good when I feel fit. Like, and for me, it's not necessarily because I have to be like skinny or a certain size anymore, where that was so much if I hang up for a very long time, or what that number is on the scale. I just like feeling good in my own body, and I like feeling fit, and I like feeling strong. And doing these classes, like I feel like a rusted out like Tin Man, like it's just getting oiled again. And I'm like, man, for me, again, mental health thinking, I really numb my body out a lot when I'm going through stuff. Like I kind of like don't attach the mind body together. Like I'm working my head, so I'm kind of shutting the body down. And same thing of like I'm dealing with really a lot of stress. So for me in the past, I'll binge eat to like numb things out, where I'm not really like connecting the mind and body together. And so I'm like, this is where for me, I got to find the balance of like, I want to feel good in my body and I want to feel good in my mind. And that's what health is. And how can I marry them together instead of like, I'm going to beat the hell out of my body by like running a marathon that I'm not prepared for. I'm going to beat the hell out of my mind by sitting here and overthinking and spinning around what I should have done instead of what I actually did do. Like, how can I, actually be whole and be present and be in both spaces at once? And like, that's damn hard work.
It's definitely damn hard. And I'd say, I think that's the right focus, because that mental strength manifests itself in all other aspects of your life. Right. So, I think, having the tools you need to react and adapt in different situations, is so, and just kind of be mindful and present when things don't go necessarily as you want them to go, is such an important skill to have. And I think it's such an underrated skill. And, like you talked about, like the overeating or the binge eating, and that's certainly something I've dealt with. But like for others, it may not necessarily be, overeating or binge. Like it may not be food related. For some, it's, alcohol, it's drugs, it's cigarettes, it's some sort of other kind of coping mechanism. So finding a way, and these are all drugs in their own way, right? Like we kind of just, like gravitate towards, our own vice, so to speak, when things go as we don't expect them to, or not in the way that we feel they should. But like it looks differently for people, and so having like the strength to be able to recognize that on the spot and kind of, shifting the dynamics before it becomes a problem is so important. And I take that over competing in a race or a medal, as you put it, any day of the week.
So from going through, your health and your weight loss journey, how do you feel like that prepared you to be a business owner?
Yeah, look, I think so. What really the half Ironmans and the triathlon and the full marathon taught me was the importance of just like setting ambitious goals, right? Because when I signed up for my half Ironman, I had just quit my job. I couldn't. So a half Ironman is, like a 1.2 mile swim, I think. 56, 58 mile bike ride, and then a half marathon at the end of that. A full one is like 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, then a full marathon at the end, which is 26 miles and change. So when I signed up for my half Ironman right after I quit, I hadn't been in the water for like a decade, I think. I didn't even know how to swim. And we'll get back to that later, because I really didn't know how to swim. So I had to get a coach. I knew how to like be in the water, but I just didn't know how to like swim in a effective way. I couldn't run for more than a minute. And, like the bike, I'd been to like spin classes, like Cycle Bar in Cincinnati. So I had an understanding of like, how to pedal. I just didn't know, how to do that in a race environment. So, when I signed up for the race, it was like just this incredibly aspirational goal. And I very quickly learned that the only way I was going to get there was to say, okay, there's these three disciplines. There's biking, there's swimming, there's running. Like, all right, running is the one that I am most familiar with, but least competent in. So let me first just start on that, right? Let me take my 1 minute run and let me try to get that to a 5K. Let me take that to a 10K. Let me take that to, the next step. And, even that 5K goal was, all right, how do I just run 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes? And I just kind of gradually picked it up. So it took me about 2.5 months to get to the 5K range. And so really, to kind of summarize, it helped me. I needed to very quickly figure out, all right, how do I break this huge aspirational goal? Check. How do I break that down into smaller, manageable tasks? And then once I kind of got comfortable and confident in that, then I transitioned to swimming, the other thing that I just kind of didn't know how to do. And so for that, I recognized that I needed to get help. And, so I researched, I found the Cincinnati Triathlon Club. I found one of the members who had competed in, USA races, and, he coached me on how to swim, and, he like came to the gym with me. And, so I recognize the importance of like seeking out help when you can't figure it out, just the importance of like, there's a ton of resources out there, whether you want to do it yourself, self-guided, or there's platforms for virtually anything to get coaches or mentors. So I found the coach that I needed. And then I finally transitioned to the bike. And then, that's the training. And then within the race, it was the same thing. So once I was in the race, it was just very, all right, I had this ambitious goal, and it was just important to break that down into smaller, manageable pieces. So I didn't necessarily view the race as, hey, I got to do 56 miles on the bike after I've just basically drowned in Lake Michigan. It was about like, how do I do the next 5 miles, the next 5, the next 5? When I got a flat, all right, how do I like focus and fix this so I don't get disqualified because of my time? And then same thing, when you get on the run, just, hey, take it. And it got to a point where to compete the race, I had to, my legs had completely locked up. And so I was just really literally running for 10 seconds, walking for 10, running for 10, walking for, so just constantly adapting. Long answer to your question. So in the business world, I think it's really reinforced the need to when something goes wrong or there's this massive task in front of you, all right, how do you break this down to smaller, more manageable goals? That's really what it's all about. How do you adapt to different conditions that you didn't anticipate so that you reach that finish line? And then how do you seek out help when you don't know how to do something? And I've had to do that a number of different times, depending on, whatever the topic is, whether I'm dealing with my supply chain or my operations or, Facebook ads or fulfillment, you name it. I think just raising your hand and asking for help is really, really important in both your personal life and professional life.
Yeah. I just think there's just so many parallels with what you've gone through, just from what I know of having a business, of failures and successes and not giving up and trying over again, between that and a health journey, and not only losing weight, but your, triathlon experience, and how it's so easy to just look at the surface level things without having that. Like, it's really easy to be like, oh, well, I follow you between TikTok and Instagram. You have almost or over 2 million people that follow you. Like, that's incredible. If your food looks really incredible, you own a pasta company, like, this is all amazing. But it's like, oh, but there's all these steps and failures and setbacks and but huge wins. Like, there's all this whole story behind you. Just like, see this one capture of what you think a thing is, or what somebody's story is, or what their journey is. And it's like, it is so filled with all of those things. But when we have those experiences for our own journey, we want to tell ourselves that we're not doing it right, or we're not in the right place, or I can never do this. I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I feel like that's a fairly, I can't think of the word for it, like a common experience that we have, or a common thought process.
100%. I think, look, at the beginning of all this, I didn't have the skills that I do now, right? I had ambition, I had curiosity, and I had a willingness to fail. And the end results that you see, if you want to call it that, or what you see today, whether you're on social or whether you see my product, it's just the outcome of, like, as you said, like, all the failures that I've had and all the practice that I've put in until, to get to that point. Right. So what you don't see, you mentioned the salad dressing earlier, to get that dressing, I probably tried 10 dressings and had to wash that little food processor. It's one of my least favorite tasks, because
they do suck to clean.
I have to wash it, and then I wish there was the next thing that I'll invent would be something to wash those a lot more, easily. But, I tried 10 different dressings before I post it, or, for every recipe, I'm probably trying 2 or 3 different recipes that just don't end up making it to my page. And those all take time, and those are done at night or in the morning, or, on the weekend or whatever. When I quit, and when Almond Love With failed, and when I was down to my last, $500 in my bank account, I actually went back to the corporate world to kind of, as I was in the process of figuring out my next step on the pasta. I knew I wasn't going to give it up, but I knew that I needed to figure out how to make it happen. And I didn't necessarily have the answer. So I went back to work for about a year and a half or so. And I was in a pretty demanding role. I had a pretty senior role, and, I would be making content at 6 a.m. or testing, and then shooting, nights and weekends. And, one of my biggest regrets, I used to live in San Francisco, was the amount of time that I spent, and sacrificed on the weekends and nights making, testing recipes and making content. And because that's the only time that I had. I mean, obviously, you can't have it all in life, but, looking back, I'm like, oh gosh, I really, it's kind of like a delicate, it's a tough predicament, right? Like you want to be doing this stuff, but then at the same time, I look back, I'm like, oh, I should have taken more advantage of like the beautiful city and my surroundings and like gone out more. But, I did what I needed to do to get to the point that I am today.
Lesson learned, should have sold feet pics.
Not sure you want my feet pics.
I'm sure someone does.
I know a good therapist. I'll put you in touch.
Oh, it's so funny that you say that, just like on a completely different topic. Because I've lived all over the country from when I worked in radio. And I learned that lesson early on that when I lived in a city, I was like, I have all the time in the world to go out and explore and see all these cool things. And then I would get a job somewhere else and I would move and I'd be like, I never got a chance to do those things. And so I've made a conscious decision, I guess, just in life in general, of like, if there's something I want to do, like tomorrow is not promised. So just in a life perspective, not much like job or I'm going to move, of like, I need to go out and have that experience now. And that's been kind of a game changer in my thought process. And that was kind of where I began my health and weight loss journey that like stuck outside of the yo-yo dieting. Is I lived in Denver. I lived in Colorado. And after growing up in Southern Illinois, like that is definitely like a paradise compared to the Midwest. Yeah. And I had just moved from Denver from upstate New York, which was just snowy and gray. And so I spent my first 2 years there just binge drinking with my friends, binge eating in private. I wasn't even going outside. And that's where, for me, I'm like, is this my life? Is this what I want to do? I'm like, I live in one of the most beautiful places and I'm not even going to like go outside. I'm not going to go hiking. I'm not going to check out the mountain. I'm not even going to walk around the park that's just gorgeous next to my apartment that is literally like down the street that has a view of the mountains and it's just beautiful and the weather's beautiful. I'm like, I'm not going to take advantage of that when I live here. And I think that really kind of shifted my perspective, not to like be like, you should have gone out more in San Francisco, but like that just, I don't know, that the comment just kind of resonated with me of like, for me having those experiences and the balance that I have found being a chronic workaholic of like, I don't want to miss my life in the process, which again is balance in it. And it's hard to figure out.
Yeah, I agree. And I like that, mantra that you mentioned. And it's like, it's not necessarily limited to just physical locations, right? But like the people around us, right? Like they're, not everyone unfortunately will be around, right? Yeah. So, enjoying the time that you have, not taking it for granted. I think it's something that I know a lot of people struggle with, but I think in just today's environment, it's really tough to like actually put that to practice. You need pretty well-defined boundaries and like an incredible, commitment to like making it happen in order to make it happen. And, that's one of my biggest focus areas. And again, it's kind of tough right now, just given everything that's going on. But, as I reflect back, I'm like, I need to make sure that I, balance out, because when I was in the corporate world, it's easy to kind of just like blame it on blame it on the job. Well, if I wasn't just, working here, I could do X, Y, and Z. Like it not only gets better, but it definitely doesn't get better. In fact, it gets worse when you're working for yourself, because unless you do an incredibly good job at like defining boundaries for yourself, like you'll always be responding to emails or to comments or like be thinking about the next thing or thinking about what you did before or, whatever it may be. So it's so important to kind of set those boundaries and running rules, because it's so easy to just get consumed by whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's a job or hobby or, whatever it may be.
Yeah. And I will say a relatable thing to that for me that also really ties into health and wellness is when I was just solely being, my own entrepreneur. I'm also the type of person that's like no work or no play until all the work is done. Like I'm very much of like, well, we'll get all this done and then it's time to rest. But especially as an entrepreneur, like there is no rest because it's never done ever. There is no like clock in, clock out hours. Not that the career I was in before really was balanced in any sort of way either, but it was really harder for me when everything was just like, I got to pay the bills. And the only person that's going to pay those bills is by how hard I hustle. And so, again, like I think a lot of us don't prioritize rest in our own health journey when it is, if not more important than what you're eating and how you're moving your body. And so if you're finding yourself as an entrepreneur or not, or whatever you're doing, you are not giving yourself any space for any sort of like rest and recovery, like you are undoing all of the work that you think that you're doing for yourself. And for me, that was really hard for me to create boundaries and make a priority because my whole life has been mostly spent of like work harder, run faster, will rest when it's done, and realizing it's never going to be done. You have to create the rest yourself.
Yeah. And I think, this hustle culture, if you want to call it that, like, we view it as some sort of flex to be constantly hustling. And it's like far from it. It's not a flex at all. In fact, it's red flags across the board, right? Because to your point, like rest is so, look at like, pro sports, right? Like, there's a reason why the NFL has an off season, or the NBA, or the, MLS, or whatever sport it is that you watch, because even, the pros need time to rest, to kind of regroup, to focus on strategy, to do team building, to, whatever it may be, to prepare for the next season. And I think, taking time to rest, whether it's a certain number of weeks out of the month or the year, or days out of the month or year, whatever, however way it looks for you, is so critical.
Well, I even want to say for me, like a realization, again, on my mental health work, is how much I've used work or overworking as my numbing agent. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing as the binge eating or drinking or any of that. It's like, well, if I can be distracted with work and I can be like, I'm too busy to deal with my garbage, then I'm like, well, of course you got to work. You got to hustle. That's a good thing. And so that was a way of me also avoiding my own problems.
It's similar to, rationalizing binge eating or whatever. Well, I've had a tough day, or, oh, I'll start tomorrow. I deserve this, whatever it may be, right? It's kind of like you're rationalizing that overworking too, in a way, right? Like, oh, well, it's got to get done. No one's here to help me, or no one else is going to do it, or no one else can do as good of a job as I do. And so I do think there's parallels. You're spot on.
So, with that being said, I know that you work a ton. Like, what's the goals? What's the future look like for you and everything that you're doing?
Yeah, I think, I'll kind of separate into two camps, one on the pasta front and then one on the social front. I think, for the last 4 years, really, my focus has been really on creating the best low carb, high protein pasta that's available. Like that's my overarching mission in life right now. And I'm going to be relentless in that pursuit, right? Even though, we're on our fourth version of Kaizen right now. It's the best version yet, but I'm already thinking about how do we improve this, right? I'm really dissecting every single piece of customer feedback, whether that's an email, that's a review, that's, them sharing on social, to try to figure out, all right, like where are there improvement opportunities, both in terms of the taste and texture of the pasta, the customer experience, the packaging, the price point, right? So, for example, in full transparency, price right now is it's something that I desperately need to work on. It's obviously really difficult as a startup to, compete with some of the bigger, bigger food companies that have massive resources. But, if you think about an average box of pasta costs about $1.39 in the US. Our pasta, if you're getting a 20% discount code or a 15% discount code, is right around $8. So my number one goal right now, in addition to improving like the taste and texture of the pasta and just the overall customer experience, is all right, what do I need to do to reduce this price point down and make it more affordable so that more people can try it? And um, so that's the pasta end. And you know, the name Kaizen stands for change for the better. It's really a continuous improvement philosophy. So for me, you know, the journey is not going to be complete anytime soon. That I'm going to constantly find ways to improve every aspect of the business. Then on the social front, look, I really enjoy, and it's so fulfilling kind of seeing you know, people inspired by my recipes, people recreating my recipes, people getting excited, getting inspired to try different spices, sauces, whatever it may be. But for me, I want to kind of take that a step further and figure out, like, how do I use my platform? And I don't have the answer for this. This is just some introspective thinking that I have, but how do I use my community for a greater cause, for, you know, for something bigger, and how do I leverage kind of my presence in my community to do something that will leave a lasting change? And I know that eating healthy and all the things that I kind of mentioned earlier do that in some way, but I'm thinking something bigger, and I don't know what that is in full transparency, but something that I've kind of tasked myself with figuring out and leaning into this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally feel that too. I feel like there's so many times where I'm like, I should create my own nonprofit, but what am I going to do? Like, I think that going through a journey like this just inspires you to really want to, you know, spread the love and pass that on. I think that when you go through hard things and you learn that, you're just like, I know how much change this has given me, and now I really want to give back, and I want other people to feel the same sort of way. I just think that's such an incredible space to be in, of being able to share your journey and share like your passion and, you know, creating the foods and creating a pasta, like all with the intention of like, how can I make somebody else's journey a little bit lighter, a little bit easier, a little bit more fun, a little bit more flavorful. I don't know. I just, from me doing this podcast for the past 5+ years, and the amount of people that I've talked to, like I've seen that over and over again, myself included, of like these people that have gone through their own journeys, and then it just turns into, how can I do this for other people? Like it's just, I don't know. It's incredible how you start doing these things to change for yourself, and how once you fill your own cup, then you can fill everyone else's.
You said it perfectly. And I think we're all unique in a way. We all have a set of experiences that makes us who we are. And I think in a world of social media, because I used to do this, right? Like just a few years ago, I was watching some of my, my inspirations on YouTube or on, you know, Instagram or Facebook or whatever it was at the time. And, you know, I would start kind of thinking about, oh, well, like, how do I be like them? Or like, oh, they do it so well, they do it with such ease, whatever it may be, right? And I think, not that everybody needs to be a content creator, and that's not what I'm suggesting, but just how you live your life, living it, being comfortable with what you bring to the table and what your contribution is. You know, I think, you know, when we, let's say, look at pro athletes, we don't necessarily compare them to, and by the way, I'm not really a sport. I don't know why I'm keep bringing up these sports analogies, because I don't even watch sports. I didn't even watch the Super Bowl this year. But, you know, when we look at pro athletes or artists or, you know, singers or whatever, maybe you don't like compare, I don't know, you don't compare Britney Spears to Dua Lipa, I don't think, right? Like you just kind of take Britney Spears for who she is and Dua Lipa for who she is, or, you know, you take, you know, Drake for who he is, and, you know, Post Malone for who he, like, you don't like put, like, you just appreciate them for who they are and what they do and what their skill set is. And I think a lot of times we forget to do that, you know. And again, I'm putting my hat on as somebody who didn't have a social following just a few years ago, but like, I wish I had recognized that sooner, and because that would have propelled me to live a much more, you know, fruitful life instead of just kind of like looking at people and putting them on a pedestal or kind of discounting my experiences and my skill sets and my contributions because for some reason it didn't look, good enough compared to somebody else.
Yeah. And I follow all the like motivational self-help crap. Like that's my jam. I love all that stuff. And so, so many things I see, like the narrative that gets repeated on there is that, you might be doing the same thing as somebody else, but you're not doing it in your voice. Like you have your unique view of the world. And so don't stop yourself from doing anything because somebody else has done it before, because everyone's done everything before. So but no one's done it like you're going to do it. So I've just,
my social, I've been on Instagram since 2017 and, I didn't really grow a following until really like December of 21. And I think I fault a lot of that to like me, like trying to be somebody that I wasn't, not in a deep way, but like I am much more like I create things that I want to create now that are true to myself, that are me. I'm not like, I'll take a look at what others are creating and I'll see it and I'll appreciate it and I'll admire it, but I'm not comparing my stuff to their stuff. Like that's just not me. Right. And so even if it gets 100 million views, whatever it may be, right? Like, I'm confident knowing that like, I don't necessarily need to be producing that kind of stuff or to be making it or to enjoy it or to like it, whatever it may be. Like everything that I put out is a reflection of me. And I think my community is smart enough to know when I steer away from that. Like I'd probably get called out immediately, right? So I don't try to be something I'm not, whether it's the type of food that I'm preparing, whether it's the presentation, whether it's the technique, whatever it may be, or even just the way I edit my videos. I've had companies reach out to me like, "Oh, we'll edit your videos for you." I'm like, no, like that's like not happening because that's like it's the last thing. I'd rather buy your recipe before I let you edit my video because like it's my own personal touch. I'm not outsourcing that.
Have you done something that's gotten 100 million views?
I'm not. No. I think the most views I've had, I think it may have been like 14, 15 million on a video. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
The views are great. But then like the comments section, just, you could just really, you need a nice tall glass of wine.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't even look at that. Like I've heard, like, I mean, just even like, I love Brene Brown. And she talked about when she did that first TED Talk, like she made the mistake of reading the comments. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no.
Oh, right.
Yeah, if I had anything that went viral, I've never had anything go viral. But if I did, I'm like, I am not reading the comment section.
I actually, it's funny you mentioned, I'm not reading. Like I actually refuse. Like I can't. I actually do not go and read the comments. I can't, especially on TikTok.
Oh God, I can't even. I was starting.
Community is incredibly generous, kind, and positive 99.99% of the time. TikTok, it's a whole new world. I've only created a handful of videos on TikTok, and then I was just like, I'm mostly like a lurker on anything anyway, but I started to go viral for a second on TikTok, and I immediately deleted it because people were just insane. And what I did, it was the dumbest thing, because of course the dumbest thing is what goes viral, is my neighbor across the street mows his whole entire yard with a weed whacker. And just like, what? It's not like this dude is poor or what everybody on TikTok thought. So I just put the Home Depot music under it and just like wrote a caption like, my neighbor mows his whole yard with a weed whacker. And it's his back. It's not his face or anything. It was like literally 10 seconds. And I mean, it blew up immediately. And I'm getting all this comments about how like I'm the worst person on earth because I didn't start a GoFundMe to get this guy a riding lawnmower, and how it just turned into like I was a trash human. I mean, I'm like, delete. I don't need this in my life. What? What? I can see how that would have unfolded the way it did on TikTok.
Yeah. And I was just like, it was so unexpected. I'm like, this is so innocent. And like, I'm not in any way clowning on this guy. This guy is in no way like in poverty. And I'm like, it just turned into how like I was the worst. And I'm like, I can't. No, thank you. I am just here to scroll now.
Yeah, I've had a couple of things like that on, foods that I had discovered while traveling, right? And I use that word discovered intentionally because, I started getting picked on for using the word discover and, that I shouldn't have used the word discover. It's,
Okay.
yeah. So I've learned to be a little bit more careful with how I frame certain descriptions.
What's wrong with the word discover?
Just cultural appropriation, Christopher Columbus.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. I see.
And I didn't obviously intend to use it in that context, but I think it's all good learning experience, and it helps you kind of think twice about how you frame something up.
That's very true. No, I feel that. In some cases, I think people are accurate. In other cases, people are just being buttholes.
In your case, next time you see somebody with a weed whacker,
I'll think twice. I don't. Yeah, I'll immediately start a GoFundMe. I will in no way share a delightful video. Oh my God, people are wild. Like, it's just like, it's just now that I'm kind of in more of like in the health and wellness industry, a more customer facing job. Like, I had for several weeks people complaining that there was sweat in the sauna. Mm-hmm. So like, you just learn like people are interesting. Like, I just like, that's something that seems like a duh moment for me, but maybe not for everybody, that people may sweat in a sauna. Okay.
Well, when you think about it, a sauna is kind of disgusting.
I love saunas. Like, I think saunas are awesome.
Private one, maybe.
Yeah, but I'm also personally not down to get into a sweat space where hundreds of people go every day. Yeah. But that is my personal choice. As much as I love a sauna. I wish I had a sauna in my house. It'd be amazing. Yeah. But I also recognize that the sauna's job is to make you sweat. Whatever. Again, that's where I'm not trying to be judgmental, but I'm here. I'm going to get hate. I'm going to get hate message for saying that, but they'll be like, oh my God, Amanda, like, what's your role against sweat? Canceled. On that note, before I do cancel myself, where does everybody find you? All of the fun things, in case somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh, I don't follow Arash on his super successful social media sites, and I've never had this pasta. Where do I go?
Yeah, so Instagram is where I'm most active. Shred Happens. And you can find my pasta on kaizenfoodcompany.com or on Amazon. I'm actually just scrolling on my phone because I believe we have a code for you, don't we?
I think we set it up as Pound This.
Pound This. Yes, Pound This gets 10% off orders. However, I'm going to just change this 10% to 20%. So for the next 30 days, anyone listening can get 20% off our Kaizen products, kaizenfoodcompany.com. Purchase any size, and the pasta comes in 2 packs and 4 packs, so you can even start out with 2. But yeah, Shred Happens on Instagram, and then kaizenfoodcompany.com. I also have a site, shredhappens.net, if you want to learn a little bit more about me there as well.
So Pound This, 1 word or 2 words? Does it matter?
Pound This is 1 word.
Okay, cool. All right, just so we're clear. Awesome.
Do you want it to be You Can Pound This or just Pound This?
Just Pound This. The only reason my Instagram is You Can Pound This is because somebody else already had taken the name Pound This. And then
are you guys
sorry?
Close? Or are you guys close or no?
Oh, I have no idea like who this person is. At the time, she was like never even active on it at all. And then when I started my LLC of Amanda Valentine Bites, I was going to switch Pound This. You Can Pound This over to that. And then that was like a weird headache. And then I'm like, well, on all my, there she is. That's Pound This. That's not me. You can pound this as me. Which I'm not sure which one sounds more inappropriate. But I mean, that was one of the whole reasons I was so hyped to get the name Pound This, because I was like, it has multiple meanings, including one that sounds like porn, which I find personally hilarious. Even though my brand has nothing to do with porn. But it could for the right price. I'm just kidding. JK, LOL. But yeah, so like that's the only reason why you can pound this, is because that other girl had that name already taken. And then if you go to Amanda Valentine Bites on Instagram, is a picture of me in 4th grade, which is also horrifying, and there's there's no content over there. So other than that one photo, in case you're interested.
It's funny because I just recently, or not recently, but a few months ago, I got approached by the owner of shredhappens.com. And they're like, oh, would you be interested? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. Like yeah, $9,000.
What?
So, I kind of said, oh, no, thank you. And then they came back with like, I don't know, 6 or something. I was like, oh, no, thank you. I'm good with shredhappens.net. It was 99 cents. From GoDaddy.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Then it went down to 4,500. I was like, no, I'm good. Then it went to like 2,700. No, I'm okay. So, but anyways, long story short, we finally, I think, agreed on a price last week. So
so you are going to get it.
I am going to get it, but I'm not paying anything close to what they were.
Well, do you know
there's a business out there of, like online real estate.
Yeah.
People that go out and buy online domains and buy and resell them. So
yeah, if I have an idea for something, I'll look up and see if I can buy the domain, and I will. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Just if it's real cheap. I mean, I don't know if I'm ever going to do anything with it, but just if I think about it. And it's so funny, just talking on a business aspect. So like, because my name is Amanda Valentine and my business name is Amanda Valentine Bites, but there's a fashion designer named Amanda Valentine. And so I tried to get my business like trademarked, and they wouldn't allow me to because of her. So and she actually owns AmandaValentine.com, which is fine, whatever. I own Amanda Valentine on Twitter, so I get confused as her all the time, but I don't use Twitter. But it's one of those things where I'm like, I can't even trademark my own name because somebody else has a name that's similar. And my lawyer was just like, they said that you couldn't differentiate between health and fitness and fashion. I see. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting to me, where we're like, I'm sure like Google searches kind of like mix between us. As far as like, not that I'm like, I'm the only other Amanda Valentine out there. I know there's probably, I'm sure, a lot, but like she's like the top person that comes up because she was on like Project One Way like several years ago or something. Yeah, but I mean, I've never been approached by her people to like buy my Twitter or anything. That would be cool. I'd be like, I will take burger and fries.
You get a selfie and we'll call it a day.
Yeah, right. I'm pretty cheap over here. So if you want to, if Amanda Valentine from Project Runway is listening and you want the Twitter handle, slide in my DMs, girls, and give me some gift cards. You pay my mortgage payment for 1 month.
Fair trade.
Yeah. Well, Arash, I always have such an awesome time chatting with you, and thank you so much for being on the podcast again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
AmandaValentineBites.com